Picture a coffee shop with the sign in the window. Average wait, 5 minutes. You go a few times, you actually time it, and honestly, it feels longer. Your average visits average more like 7.
So here's the question that runs this whole lecture. Is that gap, 5 on the sign, 7 in your data, real evidence the sign is wrong? Or did you just hit a couple of slow afternoons?
That's the leap we make today. For 2 lectures, we've been estimating unknowns, building confidence intervals. Now somebody hands us a specific claim, and we have to decide, does the data back it or not? This is Week 4, Lecture 16, an introduction to hypothesis testing. So on screen, the setup, a posted claim versus the data. The sign says 5 minutes. Your data says more. Is the gap real or is it luck?
And here's the reassuring part. We already ran one of these last week without naming it. 60 dice rolls gave a 95% interval from 2.35 to 2.85. The fair die value 3.5 fell outside that interval, so we called the die loaded. That move, comparing a claimed value to an interval, is a hypothesis test.
Which is the headline for today. The whole machine reuses last week's intervals. A rejection region is just the complement of a confidence interval. Nothing new under the hood. We're just reading the interval a new way.
Every test is a contest between 2 statements. The null, H-naught, is the status quo. The parameter equals some claimed value. Theta equals theta naught. The alternative, H1, is the claim we actually want the data to support.
And the alternative comes in flavors. 2-sided, theta is simply not equal to theta naught, could be either way, or 1-sided, theta is greater than or less than theta naught. The wording of the claim picks the direction.
One subtlety worth its own line. Rejecting H-naught means the data backs the claim, but we never prove H-naught. At most, we fail to reject it. Quick example. A cereal maker says saturated fat does not exceed 1.5 grams. We look for evidence against that. So H-naught is mu equals 1.5, and H1 is mu greater than 1.5.
Before we touch the data, we fix how much risk we'll tolerate. So the recipe. Step 1, state H-naught and H1. Step 2, pick a significance level alpha, the risk you accept before you look. Step 3, build the 100 times 1 minus alpha % confidence interval. Step 4, reject H-naught if the claimed value falls outside that interval.
Run it on the dice. H-naught mu equals 3.5 against H1 not equal at alpha of 0.05. The 95% interval was 2.35 to 2.85, and 3.5 is not in there, so we reject. The die is unfair.
And notice the lever. A smaller alpha makes a wider interval, which makes H-naught harder to reject. Smaller alpha means you're demanding stronger evidence before you overturn the status quo.
Let me make the link between interval and test exact, because it's the heart of the lecture. Testing mu equals mu naught against not equal at level alpha is the same as building the interval and rejecting when mu naught lands outside it.
Here's the algebra in one breath. Do not reject means the standardized mean, x bar minus mu naught for sigma over root m, sits between minus z alpha over 2 and plus z alpha over 2. Solve that inequality for mu naught, and you get back exactly last week's interval, x bar plus or minus z alpha over 2 times sigma over root m.
So say it out loud. The rejection region is the complement of the confidence interval. The interval is precisely the set of claimed values the data would not reject. On the picture, 3.5 is outside the bar, so we reject. Anything inside the bar, we wouldn't.
Rather than rebuild the interval every time, we standardize once. Under H-naught, form z-naught, x bar minus mu naught over s over root n.
And use sigma instead of s if sigma happens to be known. Then the rule is simple. Reject H-naught when z-naught lands out in a tail, bigger than z alpha over 2, or below minus c alpha over 2.
The picture says it all. A bell with 2 gold rejection tails and a do not reject middle. And the cutoffs are the same friends from last week. For 95%, z alpha over 2 is 1.96. For 99%, it's 2.575. Let's run one. A new fishing line is claimed to have mean breaking strength 8 kilograms, with sigma a known half kilogram. 50 lines average 7.8. Test 8 against not 8 at alpha of 0.01.
So we reject if the absolute value of z-naught beats 2.575. Sigma's known, so z-naught is 7.8 minus 8 over 0.5 over root 50, which is minus 0.2 over 0.0707, which is minus 2.83. And 2.83 clears 2.575. It's out in the left tail.
So we reject H-naught. The true mean breaking strength is below 8 kilograms. The line is weaker than claimed.
Now, when the claim points one way, more than or less than, all of alpha goes into a single tail. For H1, mu greater than mu naught, reject when z naught beats z alpha. For mu less than, reject when z naught drops below minus c alpha.
And because the whole alpha sits in one tail, z alpha is smaller than z alpha over 2. At 0.05, that's 1.645 versus 1.96. So a one-sided test rejects more readily, but only in the direction it's aimed. One-sided in action. 100 recorded deaths average 71.8 years. Assume sigma is 8.9. Is the mean lifespan greater than 70? Use alpha of 0.05.
Upper tail test. So reject if z-naught beats 1.645. Z-naught is 71.8 minus 70 over 8.9 over root 100. That's 1.8 over 0.89, which is 2.02. And 2.02 clears 1.645.
So reject H-naught. The mean lifespan really does exceed 70 years.
Same story as last lecture. If the sample is small and sigma is unknown, we swap z for student's t. Form T-naught, x bar minus mu naught over s over root m, with v equals m minus 1 degrees of freedom.
And the rules carry over untouched, just with t critical values instead of z. Reject if the absolute T-naught beats T alpha over 2 for two-sided, or pass T alpha for one-sided.
You read them from the t table the same way. At v equals 11, the 0.05 column gives 1.796. Heavier tails than the normal, that's the price of estimating sigma from just a few readings.
And as v grows large, the t-curve quietly returns to the normal, and T alpha slides back towards Z alpha. Big samples, and the distinction melts away. A test that fails to reject, which is just as instructive. 12 vacuum cleaners average 42 kilowatt-hours a year, with S of 11.9. Do they use less than the rated 46? Population normal, alpha 0.05.
Lower tail t-test, v equals 11. Reject if t-naught drops below minus 1.796. T-naught is 42 minus 46 over 11.9 over root 12. Minus 4 over 3.435, which is minus 1.16. And minus 1.16 is not past minus 1.796, so we do not reject.
But careful, that's not proof the mean is 46. It only means 12 readings are too few to show it's lower. Failing to reject is not accepting H-naught. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence.
So far, every test needed a fixed alpha up front. The p-value frees us from that. Instead of one yes or no, it reports how extreme the data is. It's the tail area past the observed statistic. Two-sided, twice the probability z beats the absolute z-naught. One-sided, the single matching tail.
And the rule is green. Reject H-naught when p is less than alpha. A smaller p is stronger evidence, but that's the whole spirit of it. A p-value is evidence, never a final verdict. On the picture, when z-naught sits past z-alpha, its p-tail is smaller than alpha, and that's exactly when you reject. Let's redecide our two z-tests by p-value. The fishing line, z-naught was minus 2.83, so p is 2 times the probability z beats 2.83. That's not 0.0047, below alpha of 0.01, so reject.
And the lifespan, z-naught was 2.02. So p is the probability z beats 2.02, not 0.0217, below 0.05, so reject.
Both reject, same verdicts as the critical value approach. But look what the p-value adds. 0.0047 versus 0.0217 tells you the fishing line evidence is the stronger of the two. Same decision, more information.
And none of this was special to the mean. Swap the parameter, swap the statistic, the 4 steps don't change. For a proportion, z-naught is p hat minus p-naught over root of p-naught q-naught over m. Reject when it lands in a tail. 500 TV families, p hat 0.68, testing p equals 0.65. Z-naught is about 1.41, under 1.96, do not reject.
And for a variance, chi-squared naught is m minus 1 times s squared over sigma naught squared. Those 5 batteries, s squared of 0.815, testing sigma squared equals 1. Chi-squared naught is 3.26, comfortably inside the cutoffs, do not reject.
And here's the satisfying part. Both agree with last lecture's confidence intervals on the very same data. A test and its interval are 2 views of one calculation.
And you don't even need the table. GeoGebra's free probability calculator handles the skewed chi-squared too. Pick chi-squared, set the degrees of freedom to 4, set the central probability to 95%, and it shades the middle and hands you the 2 cutoffs, 0.484 on the left, 11.143 on the right. And because the curve is skewed, those 2 cutoffs are not mirror images, which is the whole personality of the chi-squared.
Now, a verdict can be wrong 2 ways. Reject a true H-naught, that's a type 1 error. Fail to reject a false H-naught, that's a type 2 error.
And the probabilities have names. The type 1 rate is exactly alpha, the significance level you chose. The type 2 rate is beta, and the power of the test is 1 minus beta. The picture shows why they trade off. Alpha lives under the H-naught curve, beta under the H1 curve, and a larger sample narrows both, shrinking the 2 together. Let's actually compute a power. Take our fishing line test. Mu naught 8, sigma a half, 50 lines, alpha 0.01. Suppose the truth is really mu 1 equals 7.8. Across many samples, how often would we catch it?
The standardized gap D is mu naught minus mu 1 over sigma over root m, 0.2 over 0.0707, which is 2.83. Beta works out to about 0.40, so the power is 1 minus beta, about 0.60, a 60% chance of catching a 0.2 of a kilogram shortfall.
And that raises the natural question, power against which alternative? Power is a whole curve in mu 1. You fix it at the smallest shift worth detecting, here 0.2 of a kilogram. And if you want more power, take a bigger sample.
So step back at what we built. H-naught versus H1. The test statistic, z-naught or t-naught when sigma is unknown. 1 and 2-sided rejection regions. Type 1 and type 2 errors with power 1 minus beta. And the p-value, read as evidence, not a verdict.
And remember Babsha's $11 gap, direct orders versus the app? Now we can ask it precisely. H-naught says the 2 means are equal. The $11 gap is the evidence, and a small p would call it real, not chance.
Which is exactly where week 5 picks up. 2 sample tests, comparing 2 means or 2 proportions, like Babsha's 2 channels, and then simple linear regression. But that's next time. Nicely done.